My name is Eli Hart. I was raised in suburban Michigan, and this is my family betrayal and revenge story. I was 16 the first time I really noticed it. My friends had baby albums, silly videos of their first steps, photos of them grinning with cake smeared across their cheeks on their first birthdays. Me? I had one faded photo in a stroller that looked borrowed, no timestamp, no context. Nothing else. Whenever I asked, my mom, no, the woman I thought was my mom, would smile too quickly and say, "We just didn't take many pictures back then." Life was busy. Dad would nod silently, like the subject made him nervous. I'd shrug it off, because what else could I do? Please subscribe so that you never miss any of our family revenge stories. Also, like our videos, it keeps us motivated in delivering more family betrayal stories. Welcome back to the story, but it wasn't just the missing photos. It was the emotional gap I couldn't bridge. I was never hit, never abused. But love in our house came in carefully measured doses. They were polite, responsible, but never warm. My birthdays felt like awkward obligations. My achievements got a stiff pat on the back. I grew up wondering if I was just hard to love, then everything changed the day I collapsed at school, severe stomach pain, cold sweats, blacking out in the hallway. They rushed me to the ER. I remember the beeping machines, the frantic nurses, the IVs. But mostly, I remember the doctor's face when he looked at my parents, confused, then cautious. "Your son has O-negative blood," he said. "We'll need to transfuse, but just to confirm, are either of you also O-negative?" My parents exchanged glances. Mom said she was AB. Dad claimed to be B positive. The doctor blinked. That's biologically impossible. It was like time slowed. My heart, already weakened, now thudded with a new kind of panic. I watched their faces twist, not in fear for me, but fear of being found out. After the surgery, when I was stable, I demanded answers. Mom cried. Real tears. The kind I'd never seen from her. Dad just sat in the corner, staring at the floor like it might swallow him whole. "You weren't supposed to find out this way," Mom whispered, "so I wasn't crazy." The missing photos. The cold distance. The strange silence about my birth. It wasn't just me. It was a lie, one that had been carefully constructed and maintained for over 16 years. I was adopted, no warning. No explanation. No loving conversation over cocoa and blankets. Just a truth dropped like a bomb in a sterile hospital room, after years of being treated like a guest in the only home I'd ever known. I wanted to scream. To demand why. Who? When? Why didn't they tell me? But my throat was dry and my chest heavy, and all I could do was stare at these people, these strangers who had called themselves my parents, and in that moment, something inside me broke, not just from the betrayal, but from the certainty that my real story, the one I'd never been told, was out there, buried beneath years of silence. And I was going to find it, no matter what it took. The truth, once spoken, didn't bring peace. It brought silence. After the hospital incident, my parents, or rather, the couple who raised me, finally sat me down. No dramatics. No heartfelt apologies. Just a clinical admission, yes. You were adopted. It was closed. We thought it was best you never knew. Best for who? I asked about my birth parents. Names. Circumstances. Why they gave me up. They refused to say anything. Claimed they didn't know. That it was part of the agreement. But I saw the look on my father's face, the way his eyes flickered when I pressed him. They knew more than they were letting on. And if they weren't going to tell me, I'd find out on my own. That's when my obsession began. At first, I tried to go through official channels, called the county office where they said I was born. I was told the records were sealed. Closed adoptions protect everyone's privacy, they said. But whose privacy were they protecting? Not mine. I was the one walking around without a past, so I got creative. I searched online adoption forums, joined Facebook groups, even paid for access to genealogy sites. I swabbed the inside of my cheek and mailed off DNA to 3 different services. Weeks later, I got the first hit, a third cousin in a city I'd never visited. Then another match. Then a name I recognized from a court database that listed sealed adoption petitions. The pieces were scattered. But I began connecting the dots. I found out I wasn't born in the city I was raised in, but 2 hours away. My birth certificate had been amended, my adoptive parents listed as my birth parents. Standard procedure for closed adoptions, I learned. But a lie, nonetheless. A legal lie. Then I found something chilling, a handwritten note in a box in the attic, my mother's old stationery, crumpled and water-stained. A line scrawled at the top read, "ED says it's better if no one ever finds out. She's paid enough. Keep everything quiet." No date. No signature. Just that one line, ED. Who was she? The initials haunted me. I didn't know it yet, but those 2 letters would change everything. Meanwhile, my adoptive parents grew nervous. They knew I was digging. Dad told me to let the past stay buried. Mom begged me to focus on the life you have. But how could I? Every lie they told felt like another hole in the floor I was standing on. This wasn't just about finding out where I came from anymore. This was about uncovering why my truth had been stolen and who made that decision. I wasn't a baby anymore. I wasn't someone else's secret to bury. I was ready to pull back the curtain they'd kept shut for 16 years. And no matter how dark it got, I was going to see what was behind it. It started with the name Esther Donovan. I found it tucked between layers of redacted court files and archived hospital paperwork, buried under a sea of numbers and pseudonyms. But there it was. The name matched the initials in the note I'd found in the attic. ED says it's better if no one ever finds out. Esther Donovan wasn't some lost teenager or struggling single mom forced to make a hard choice. No. She was something else entirely. Google painted a picture almost too pristine to believe. Philanthropist. Socialite. Former beauty queen turned public speaker on family values. Photos of her flooded my screen, posing with city officials. Cutting ribbons at charity events, giving teary-eyed speeches about motherhood. She ran a children's nonprofit. She hosted fundraisers for orphanages, and yet I was the child she gave away. She had 3 other children. All grown now. The youngest was about my age, a golden-haired Ivy League poster child with a trust fund and a last name that opened doors. They appeared in magazines, at galas, in press interviews. Their lives gleamed with ease and security, while I grew up wondering why hugs felt strained. Why no one looked at me quite like they looked at their real kids. Why I felt like an afterthought in my own life. I wasn't the result of a tragedy, I was a scandal, digging deeper. I found whispers, old gossip columns buried in print archives, rumors that Esther had vanished from public view for a few months about 20 years ago, citing health complications. Around the same time I was born, there was no sign of a father. No record of a marriage ending or a baby being buried. Just a gap. She didn't lose me, she erased me. I stared at her picture for hours, studying every line of her face. Did I look like her? Maybe. The same arch in the brow, the same mouth when she smiled for cameras. It was surreal. Like staring at a mannequin that had been molded from a face I hadn't known I missed until now. But the deeper I stared, the angrier I got. She made a choice to remove me from her life like a blemish. And then she went on to build a sparkling empire on the very image of motherhood and charity. She didn't just abandon me, she built a kingdom on the ruins of my identity, and all these years, she thought her secret was safe. That the past would never claw its way back, but it had. I wasn't just looking for answers anymore. I was looking at the woman who traded me for silence and status, and I swore to myself then and there I wouldn't just knock on her door and beg for recognition. I would step back into her life in a way she never saw coming. Because secrets always have a price, and she was about to pay it. The first time I saw her in person, I nearly turned around and walked away. Esther Donovan stepped out of a sleek black SUV in front of a marble-columned mansion, laughing like someone who had never known loss. Her blonde hair was perfect, not a strand out of place. Her pearls gleamed under the sun like armor. She waved to a neighbor and walked through the wrought iron gate as if she hadn't thrown her own child away. I stayed in my car across the street, engine off, tinted windows down just enough. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel, not from fear. From rage. 4 weeks, I watched, not out of malice, not at first. I needed to understand the people who had taken the life I should have had. Esther lived in luxury, no doubt. The estate stretched across 2 acres. It had a tennis court, a pool, and a security system I quickly learned how to bypass from public blueprints filed with the city. Her family moved through that house like royalty. The golden son, Zachary Donovan, wore designer suits and smiled for every camera that passed his way. He had his own tech startup, but public records showed it was funded by Esther's anonymous donation. And his company? A shell, bleeding cash into luxury trips and private parties. Then there was the eldest daughter, Camille. She hosted community workshops and gave TED-style talks about empowerment. But I found footage from behind the scenes, her screaming at assistants, threatening to fire volunteers for not making her green smoothie the right way. A tyrant in stilettos, the youngest, Mia, was quiet. Seemingly the only genuine one. She volunteered at the animal shelter down the road. I never saw her lie, not once. But she lived under her mother's shadow, tight-lipped, always watching. Always adjusting herself to fit. Meanwhile, I was living out of a dingy apartment, scraping by on part-time freelance gigs and student debt. Every piece of my life was earned. Every piece of theirs was handed over in gift wrap, and yet they were praised, celebrated. I stood outside that mansion almost every day for a month, watching through binoculars, tracking their routines. Camille left at 7:45 a.m. sharp. Zachary rarely rose before noon. Esther's driver picked her up at 9:30 for meetings or interviews. Their lives were predictable, curated, choreographed like a stage play, but the longer I watched, the more I saw the cracks. Fake smiles. Slamming doors. Hushed arguments behind tinted windows. The perfect image was just that, an image. I wasn't the only secret they were hiding, and I realized something chilling. This wasn't a happy family that had once made a hard choice. This was a kingdom built on lies. I didn't belong to them. But I wasn't just a stranger anymore, either. I was their mistake. The living proof they thought they could bury, and it was time to start letting the rot show. It wasn't difficult to get in. That's the ironic part. All it took was a forged resume, a polished LinkedIn profile, and a recommendation letter I wrote myself under a fabricated mentor's name. In a world where image is everything, people rarely look deeper. Especially not when you look clean, speak well, and keep your head down. Zachary Donovan's law firm was exactly what I expected: sleek, modern, dripping with self-importance. Glass walls, overpriced espresso machines, and interns who bragged more about networking than doing any actual work. It was the perfect place to hide in plain sight. I went by Eli Hart. No one questioned it. I was just another nameless face in a sea of underpaid overachievers, expected to run errands, organize files, and keep my mouth shut. I did that. And more, while the others scrolled on their phones or tried to impress Zachary with forced laughter. I watched. I listened. I learned, and then I searched. Every late night I volunteered to stay and finish up was a night I combed through confidential files. I discovered shady contracts hidden in shell corporations. Client invoices with no work attached. A silent partnership between Zachary's firm and one of Esther's charitable foundations. On paper, it looked like philanthropy. But it was a funnel. Money was being laundered under the guise of donations, then redirected into private accounts. They were stealing from donors. From the public. From the very children their nonprofit claimed to help. I copied everything. Every transaction. Every document. Every name, flash drives hidden in my backpack. Passwords stored in encrypted notes. I cataloged it all methodically, like an archivist of their hypocrisy. No one noticed. Zachary was too arrogant to suspect a lowly intern. He barely remembered our names. Camille stopped by once to scream at a junior associate and stormed out with a purse that probably cost more than my rent. Esther? She never visited the office. She let her children manage the empire, while she polished the crown. Every day I spent inside that building, I felt the weight of what they'd taken from me, not just a family. A history. A name. A truth, and I wasn't going to scream or rage to get it back. I was going to dismantle them, quietly, from the inside out. The more secrets I gathered, the more powerful I felt. Not because I wanted revenge for revenge's sake, but because I finally held something they couldn't control, the truth, and truth is dangerous when it comes from the shadows. They had no idea the intern they ignored was the storm brewing in their foundation, no idea their greatest secret had a name and a plan. Soon, the masks would fall. The curtains would burn, and all the lies they'd built their kingdom on would come crashing down. It started with a single email, encrypted. Anonymous, impossible to trace. I sent it to a local journalist known for exposing corruption, nothing too flashy at first. Just a handful of questionable financial documents, a few inconsistencies in Esther Donovan's non-profit reports, and some names that no one would expect to see connected to fraud. I signed it simply, a concerned insider. 2 weeks later, it made the front page. Whispers of fraud. Are the Donovans hiding something behind their philanthropy? The family tried to brush it off, of course. Camille called it baseless defamation. Zachary blamed a disgruntled former employee. Esther stood in front of cameras and used every practiced expression in her arsenal: concerned, confused, hurt. She played her part like the seasoned manipulator she was, but behind the curtain, things were already starting to fracture. Donors pulled out. Silent partners withdrew. The board of Esther's charity held an emergency meeting. Investigators started combing through the books, asking questions no one had dared to before. The whispers became murmurs. Then murmurs became headlines, and I was still just the intern. Watching, waiting, feeding the flames, I leaked morgue bank statements showing unexplained withdrawals, photos of luxury vacations labeled as charity retreats. Names of ghost employees who were being paid under multiple aliases. Each drop carefully timed, each detail undeniable. The press had a field day. Zachary's startup lost its investors overnight. Camille's speaking engagements were quietly cancelled. Even the city's mayor distanced himself from Esther after she was subpoenaed for financial misconduct. But the best part, they had no idea who was behind it. I'd become a ghost in their kingdom, haunting every corner of their empire with the truth they tried so hard to bury. And still, they searched in the wrong places. Blamed the media. Blamed each other. Esther stopped appearing in public. She issued a shaky video statement from her estate, talking about dark forces and political sabotage. But her eyes, those cold, polished eyes, were different now. They were scared, because for the first time in her life, Esther Donovan didn't control the narrative, and I wasn't finished. I started seeing the effects up close. At the law firm, Zachary barked orders and slammed doors, furious and unraveling. He fired 3 people in a week, paranoid that someone was spying on him. The once polished firm became a pressure cooker of fear, but I stayed calm. Quiet. Invisible, just like I had been my entire life, except now, I held the strings. They spent decades building their spotless image brick by brick, lie by lie, and now I was peeling away the layers. Revealing the rot. Their legacy wasn't crumbling because of me, it was crumbling because it was hollow, and I was just the first crack. I had stayed in the shadows long enough. By the time I decided to go public, the Donovans were already knee-deep in scandal. Accusations of fraud, tax evasion, and embezzlement circled them like vultures. But the world still didn't know the full story. My story, until I gave it to them. I didn't just hand it to a reporter, I crafted it. I wrote the truth with surgical precision, born in secrecy, adopted in silence, erased from existence by a woman obsessed with perfection. I included copies of documents I had carefully gathered, sealed court records, DNA results, the handwritten note with her initials, and proof that the adoption had been privately arranged and covered with hush money. And at the center of it all, Esther Donovan, the benevolent mother and philanthropist, who had once discarded her own child like a blemish. The journalist I sent it to didn't hesitate. The story exploded. The Donovan dynasty's secret. Abandoned son breaks silence. I didn't attach my face at first, just my voice in a recorded interview. But it was enough. The media latched on, hungry for blood. It was the perfect scandal: wealth, betrayal, hidden children, and a pristine public figure brought low by her own lies. Within hours, her estate was swarmed with reporters. Helicopters circled. Paparazzi followed her children through parking garages and coffee shops, shouting questions they couldn't answer. Inside their mansion, the family began to fracture publicly. Zachary was the first to snap. At a press conference meant to restore confidence in his firm, he lashed out at the media, accidentally admitting he'd known something like this was coming for months. That slip cost him his remaining clients. Camille posted a long-winded social media essay blaming the patriarchy and toxic maternal legacies, subtly throwing Esther under the bus while trying to save face. No one bought it. Even Mia, quiet, gentle Mia, deleted all her family photos online and disappeared from the public eye entirely. But Esther? She did what Esther always did. She lied. She called me a mistake from a difficult period in her life. Claimed she had no choice. That she was pressured. That my birth was complicated and traumatic, but the documents said otherwise. Her words fell flat. Her empire was crumbling, and this time, her pearl-white smile couldn't hold it together, and yet, despite the chaos, no one in that house came looking for me. No apology. No letter. No knock at my door. They didn't want to make amends, they wanted to survive the fallout, but I didn't share my story for closure, I shared it because they built their success by silencing me. Now, I was the voice they couldn't ignore. The secret they couldn't bury, and the more they scrambled to contain the damage, the more the world saw the truth. Their perfect life had always been a lie, and I was living, breathing proof of it. It was a message delivered through her lawyer, impersonal. Clinical, just like everything else she did. Esther Donovan requests a private meeting. No media. No attorneys. Just you. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. After everything, after the lies, the abandonment, the empire built on my erasure. She wanted a meeting, but curiosity won. Not for answers. I had those. I just wanted to see her fall apart with my own eyes. We met in a secluded garden cafe far from her world of marble and press conferences. She arrived in a long beige coat, dark sunglasses, and heels that didn't quite match the humility she was pretending to wear. But I recognized her instantly. It was impossible not to. She moved like someone who always assumed the world would make room for her. She sat across from me and removed her glasses. For a second, just a second, there was something behind her eyes that almost resembled guilt. Then came the performance. "I know you must be angry," she began, her voice soft, fragile, like she was trying to cast herself as the victim. I was young. Scared. The circumstances were complicated. I let her speak. Let her twist the narrative. Say the words she'd probably rehearsed 100 times in front of a mirror. I wanted to keep you, but I couldn't. There were people involved. Expectations. Pressure. I thought you'd have a better life with someone else. She said it with a straight face. As if giving away her own child was an act of compassion, not convenience. I stared at her, silent, letting the weight of her excuses settle into the cold space between us. She looked uncomfortable under my gaze, maybe for the first time in her life. She wasn't used to being stripped of control. "You didn't lose me," I finally said, voice calm, even. "You discarded me. You lived your life pretending I never existed, and when your perfect little world started to crack, you reached out, not because you care, but because you're afraid." Her mouth tightened. Her eyes darted around, as if searching for something to ground her. "I made mistakes," she said. "But surely you can understand how hard it was for me. I was protecting my family." I leaned in, just slightly. "You gave me away," I said, voice low. "And now I've given the world a clearer picture of who you really are." She blinked. Once. Twice. Then sat back, as if I'd struck her. But I hadn't come for revenge or forgiveness. I came for the truth. And I got it. There was no apology in her. No love. Just regret for being caught. "I don't hate you," I added, standing. "That would require me to still care." Then I left her sitting there in that quiet garden, drowning in the consequences she spent a lifetime dodging, and for the first time, I didn't feel like the forgotten one. I felt free. Justice doesn't always come with handcuffs or headlines, sometimes it comes in silence. In walking away, not as the wounded one, but as the one who survived, after that final meeting with Esther, the offers started coming in. A quiet settlement to compensate for emotional distress. An invitation to rebuild privately. Her lawyer offered 6 figures to keep my story out of court, off TV, out of books. But I didn't want her money. That was never the point. Taking a check would have tied me to them forever, just another secret transaction in a long list of silenced truths. I didn't need hush money. I had already spoken. The real justice was letting the truth live without apology. No smear campaigns. No lawsuits. Just facts, exposed for the world to see. Esther's charity lost its funding. Her name was stripped from boards, removed from plaques, erased from the very legacy she built by erasing me. Her perfect family imploded. Camille moved abroad under a cloud of shame. Zachary's firm folded after the audit revealed more than he could spin away. Mia, sweet, silent Mia, was the only one who reached out with a letter. It didn't say much, just 5 simple words: "I'm sorry. You deserved better." I never responded, but I kept it, not out of sentiment, but as a reminder that not all of them were soulless. Just trapped in the same legacy of lies. As for me, I started over. I legally changed my name, not to hide, but to reclaim. A name of my own choosing, not given to me by strangers or stained by abandonment. I found work that mattered. I moved into a place where I could breathe. I built relationships on truth, not performance. No more pretending. No more shadows. Some people asked if I'd ever forgive Esther. Here's the truth: I don't need to. Forgiveness isn't for people who show no remorse. It's not something you owe those who never asked for it. What I chose wasn't forgiveness. It was release. I released the anger, the longing, the years I spent aching for answers. I let them all drift away, like smoke from a fire that had finally burned itself out, because I didn't destroy them, they destroyed themselves. All I did was hold up the mirror. The world saw the truth, and so did they. I was never looking for revenge. I was looking for recognition. For the past to finally meet the present. For the silence to break, and it did, not with a bang, but with a quiet step forward. Into the life I created for myself. I may have been erased from their version of the story, but I've written my own, and in it I am not a secret, I am not forgotten, I am free.